Spider-Man has existed in comics since 1962. From then to now consists of dozens, maybe even hundreds of artists and writers to helm the mantle of a Spider-Man book. But which are the best? We can't get into writers today, but we will be talking about my favorites when it comes to Spider-Man's many artists. Just keep in mind that this is a very opinionated video. These spots are completely and utterly determined on my personal taste and what I find appealing to look on the page. And again, this is in no way me saying one is better than the other, it's just my personal picks. So with that in mind, let's break it down. Number 10, Humberto Ramos. When I was first introduced to Spider-Man in my middle school library with my number 1 pick, I got home and used all my chore money to pick up old Spider-Man books to keep on reading, and one of the books I ordered was Spider-Man Big Time. It was here that I was first introduced to Humberto Ramos. He portrayed this cartoony and expressive Spider-Man that was so unlike what I had seen with my number 1 pick. Ramos would continue to draw Spider-Man in my first ever comic book subscription with the ending of Amazing Spider-Man and the entire run of Superior Spider-Man. He didn't draw the entire run of Superior Spider-Man, but I subscribed through the whole thing, and he did a lot of art for that. Number 9, Steve Ditko. You thought there was a chance the legend himself wouldn't be on this list? While I don't hate his overall style, I also don't love it. It's just my personal opinion. But there is no way that he is not appearing on this list for everything that he has done for this character. This was the first man to ever draw the character we've all come to know and love today, and I can't even begin to thank him enough for helping bring Spidey to life. Rest easy, Steve. Number 8, Marcos Martin. Martin has a style of drawing the character that cannot be confused with any other artist. Every time I see his art, I always take a good minute to look really hard at each panel because it just draws such a fun Spider-Man to look at. That's all I have to say about this one. Number 7, Gerardo Sandoval. I had never seen Sandoval's work until I recently read the Hunted arc in the new Amazing Spider-Man book. I had to immediately text my uncle, who is one of the only people who love Spider-Man more than I do, asking him who had done this art. As soon as I found out, I did a deep dive in his work. The way he draws Spidey gives me such a Todd McFarlane vibe, and I love it so much. I love the giant eyes he gives him and how defined they are, and now I just want to see him draw more Spidey books. Number 6, John Romita Sr. Another legend that had to be on this list. For many, this is their definitive Spider-Man. Romita Sr. absolutely astounded everyone with his art and has created some art pieces that are hanging on walls, including mine to this day. You want classic Spider-Man? Go to Romita Sr. Number 5, Todd McFarlane. Now I know what you're thinking, how dare you put the legend himself at number 5? You absolute prick, go die in a hole. Trust me guys, I know, 5, 4, 3, and 2 were really hard for me to, sort out. This just comes down to the fact that I haven't had as much exposure to McFarlane as I have these next few in terms of really liking their art. They're all kinda equal. Number 4, Ryan Ottley. Anytime the new Amazing Spider-Man issue is out, it's the first one I grab when I head to my local comic book shop on Wednesdays. This isn't just because of the stellar writing by Nick Spencer, but it also has a lot to do with the main artist for the series, Ryan Ottley. Ever since I began picking up this series, I have absolutely fell in love with Ottley's art, even to a point where I get genuinely disappointed when he's not on an issue. I absolutely love his art, and I will be following whatever books he does for a very long time. Number 3, Ryan Stegman. Like I said earlier, one of my first comic book subscriptions was to the Superior Spider-Man in 2013. I absolutely adored Stegman's incredibly detailed drawings of the wall crawler, and paired with Slott's great writing on this book, it caused me to never want to put down a Superior Spider-Man book. Also, if you have yet to see his work on Absolute Carnage, check it out. It is absolutely stellar. Number 2, Mark Bagley. You knew this was coming.
You knew this was coming, Pete.
The final 2 were always going to be controversial, but come on, you knew he'd be one of them. Mark Bagley is probably the artist that I've seen the most of when it comes to Spider-Man. One of the things that inspired me to begin reading the comics found in my middle school's library was the news that Peter Parker had died and Miles Morales had taken over. I read a book by the artist in my number 1 spot at first, but after some digging and finding out that it was the Ultimate Universe of Spider-Man, I looked through the library and boom, there it was, the Ultimate Spider-Man Collection Part 1. I read the shit out of that, and years later have collected almost every single Ultimate Spider-Man trade and issues following those trades. I love Mark Bagley, but sadly, I don't think anything could ever top my number 1 spot. Number 1, John Romita Jr. I have and will always love and adore this Spider-Man art. I don't know what it is about it. Maybe it's the buggy eyes, maybe it's the detailed webbing, maybe it's even the lighting. But in all honesty, I don't think I understand why. But I also don't think I have to, because I know that when I think of Spider-Man, this is what I see. Romita Jr.'s run on the Spider-Man books is the first thing I read in my middle school library during reading time after hearing Peter Parker had died on the internet. It was my first exposure to the characters and comics, and right then and there, that became my ideal Spider-Man. Seeing him fight Moreland had me at the edge of my seat, and Romita Jr.'s art carried me through the story the entire way. Not only was this my first experience with Spider-Man comics, this was my first experience with comics in general, so I hold a really, really near and dear place in my heart for this art and these books. If someone ever asks me who my favorite Spider-Man artist is, I will always say John Romita Jr. Thank you, man. And thank you guys for watching this video. If you liked it, please make sure to leave a like and maybe consider subscribing. If you didn't like or agree with my list, how about instead of cussing me out, maybe just leave yours in the comments below. I'd love to hear it and I'd love to talk about it. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you all next time. And as always, stay nerdy.